Hi, this is Professor Lucien, and this is the recorded Lecture 4 for Safety 43 for Spring 2019. Now, typically, Bob Evangelisi does this lecture for me because of his background in environmental auditing, and he uses this technique. But I'm going to cover his PowerPoint very briefly, and then what I really want you to do is, after watching this video, I do want you to read this article by Tomlinson, published in 2015. It's only 2 pages. It's a quick read, but it does point out some very critical concepts or questions that come out of a risk cause analysis. I do want you to watch this under 2-minute video on YouTube from the Geron Institute called the Quality Minute. They use a root cause analysis technique, and I want you to kind of pay attention to how they reach their ultimate finding and recommendation. This document here comes from OSHA, and you can see what they say about root cause analysis. Now, this other video on YouTube, it's just over 7 minutes long, but it's good, and you'll see a lot of redundancies in the topics between this video and what you have in Bob Evangelisi's somewhat long, I think it's 79 slide PowerPoint. But do watch this. It's not specified for safety, which is great because you get to see it from more of a business or work perspective, which is how I would want to teach it to you. And then finally, what I want you to do is watch this Chemical Safety Board video. It's 12.5 minutes long, but I think you'll find it interesting. So there was an explosion a few years ago in West Texas, and they did an investigation, and you kind of see how they reached their conclusions. I want you to take note of that. And then finally, I want you to complete quiz 4. Now, you can look at that right away to see what sort of questions I'm asking because they come from a variety of these sources, and then bring a copy of that with you to the next lecture, or email it to me if you're not going to make it to lecture. And you don't have to print it off or anything. You could just take a piece of paper out and write out your answer. It's whatever is easiest for you. So without further ado, let's get to the PowerPoint. And I believe that all I have to do is hit go, and here we go. So this is the end of it. Fantastic. So I apologize. It should have opened to the first one. So much for preparation. Hey, Lucien. And I am going as fast as I can, and I wish there was a quicker way to do this, but it's not letting me. So let's just... Yeah, you're kind of seeing in reverse here. Maybe I should speak in reverse, because I'm just going to hit the main things. So we're getting there. As you can see, it's long, so I'm going to go through this quickly. But when Bob does it, he goes pretty quick too. We're there. So he likes George Carlin, which is why he likes to use his quotes. I think it's pretty funny. So what we want to do is root cause analysis is different than an incident analysis, because what an incident analysis does is it tries to determine what happened. A root cause analysis tries to determine why. And in using a systematic approach and collecting data, trying to keep as much subjectivity and opinion and bias out of it as possible, you should be able to identify source causes, things that if they were controlled, the accident or incident process would not reach its fruition and therefore result in injury or disaster or whatever it is. So it's sort of defining the process that led to it, thinking back in time and all the contributing factors, and figure out what would be the most effective way to prevent this from happening again, from its root versus just fixing the person. So here's all the different topics. In the video from YouTube, the 7-minute one, you'll see that they will cover these same things. And what I want to point out is that there is consistency in this field. So let's not spend too much time on defining, but traditionally, what you do for an incident investigation is, well, what happened? Well, the person fell. Well, what was the cause? It was the person. They shouldn't have fallen. But a more systematic process would be to really determine what led the person to be put into the situation that resulted in the exposure that resulted in injury, or the condition that allowed this thing to explode or go damaged. So the idea is, if we can eliminate the root cause or control the root cause, then we are effectively preventing it from happening again. Now, if it's complex and there's multiple causes, sure, there's a chance that maybe there's a failure in our corrective actions. But what we want to do is try to build in redundancies or measures ad hoc, so that we can identify when something is about to fail and then make a corrective action, or at least alert people and maybe minimize the severity. Now, I hope as I just said that, you're thinking, wow, that sounds a lot like the quality management lecture we just had. Indeed, it is, which is why I typically have the root cause analysis right after, because root cause analysis is one of the fundamental aspects of quality management. To identify what could cause a process to go out of tolerance, therefore instituting corrective action, possibly either an automated or a redundancy, or at least the notification, the understanding that it is moving away from what we want, and therefore we institute corrective action. So I'm going to now go pretty quick. So this is, I like this drawing. So we think this is the way work occurs, but in all actuality, that is the way it occurs. And I think that's the first step, is to understand that things aren't going to always go as planned. And as Mike Tyson famously said, he goes, every boxer has a plan going in, and then they get punched in the face. So let's go through a couple things that Bob talks about here. He's getting into the defining of what would be investigated. Ideally, you investigate everything, every potential for a negative outcome, even if it's a near miss or property damage, it should be investigated to find out what's really going on. It's when we get lazy or adhere to attribution error, in which we tend to blame the person or the people most proximal to the accident, we're not getting to the root cause, which is why I take a systems approach and I study safety from a perspective of safety is an attribute of work. Therefore, I study the work and all that encompasses, and I use my system model. But there are different ways in which to capture that kind of approach. And so, yeah. So Bob's getting into there is some randomness and why things happen. And we'll be covering that in our DICE lab coming up. So he talks about human error. We're going to talk about that in lecture 5. So I'm just going to let you know that people don't intentionally get hurt. It's usually through these failures. So one technique that can be used, and this was covered in 3D8 as well in the Oakley book, is the Haddon Matrix. And so this is what it looks like, and you're going pre-event, event, and post-event. So you're trying to analyze it from more of a time perspective, but you're trying to evaluate it from the person, the community, which I guess you could call organization, or the perceptual expectation of the person, or the work environment, and then finally the physical work environment. And the goals, it's all a learning experience without blaming. And here are some other references, and you can see that several of them are environmental related. Again, that's Bob's bread and butter. Here are these steps. These shouldn't be a surprise to you. I want to speed this up because I want to spend more time with you watching the other videos. These 4 Ps, this came directly from the Oakley book, I believe, because I know he'd covered this as well. And asking questions. Again, you're trying to get to the facts and not relying on opinion and bias. Here are different tools you can use. I know I'm going through this fast, but you're going to see this in the video from YouTube as well. So the symptom is here, underlying causes. Again, the idea is if we identify the proper root cause, if that root cause is controlled, could the incident still occur or not? And if it still can, then we haven't identified all the root causes or the actual root cause itself. And to say, how are we going to prevent someone from falling? Well, we'll just train the person to use a ladder, right? Well, there are a lot of things that can go into that as well. So there's multiple solutions, multifaceted corrective action, if you will. So again, we got more things Bob's talking about. The incident investigation tells you what went wrong, root cause, why did it go wrong? And if the fix isn't comprehensive to the why, then it's probably going to reoccur. Here are more questions, to be asked. We'll probably get to the 5 why pretty soon. It's a great technique for kind of getting down to what contributed. Also, you can also use a fishbone diagram, or I use a systems model for identifying. So again, you're getting kind of the same. It's fishbone, 5 why. Pareto analysis. Remember we talked about that. That was a Geron term in which it's the precious few and the insignificant many. 20% of something tends to result in 80% of the output. A failure mode and effective analysis, just another matrix to use for analysis. Fault tree, event causal analysis. These things allow us to map what led to the incident and then backtracking to find out what we can do to prevent it from happening again. And these were things that were covered in 388. Hopefully you remember or have your notes still from the Oakley book. If not, you may want to reacquire some of those documents. And I believe I provided a PDF from an energy publication, because they use these to prevent, a nuclear meltdown. Effective. So here's more stuff on the 5 why. Here's stuff on the fishbone. Brainstorming can be used, but he does point out some negatives that sometimes it can go awry if you have a dominant personality running the meeting. And here's cause and effect. Again, this is covered in 388. Here's an example of what could be done, kind of a subtle example. Talks about the Pareto analysis, since this is something we're going to be using when we get to analyzing loss run data. And here's a checklist, more on the fault tree. Again, you're trying to avoid blaming the worker, so you're looking beyond them. What led to their expectations, their attitude, what was available to them. Sometimes, they know the right thing to do because they were taught the right thing to do, but they weren't allowed to do it, and we got to find out what led to that. And we have completed the lecture. So what I want you to do now is read the Tomlinson. It is short, it's quick. I might be able to bring it up here for you. And there's certain things I want you to key on, and that is, what are the critical questions? If identify the root cause, can this happen again? Will the countermeasures developed actually correct the root cause? It's so important. And then I want you to kind of read, they've got, some other stuff. This is the OSHA document I want you to look at, kind of see what they say about it. Going back, then watch these 2 videos. I'd play them now, but I'm afraid recording may kind of bog things down. And then this could be watched on YouTube, but I want you to check out the Chemical Safety Board website. Maybe something you may want to use in the future to try to educate management on what could happen in a particular incident, because there's been a lot of incidents over the years, and they do a good job with reporting and providing videos. And then here's a quiz 4. If you have any questions, please contact me. Again, I want you to watch this by next Monday, because on Tuesday we'll be moving to Lecture 5. We'll grade this quiz and take a quiz 5 based on Lecture 3. Thanks a lot. Bye.